After 23 years at Montgomery Healthcare Systems, I'd stopped counting the number of emergency calls on holidays, late nights developing protocols that saved lives, and weekend conferences I attended on my own dime. 23 years of dedication, and I climbed from staff nurse to director of clinical operations. I transformed our patient care metrics from bottom quartile to industry leading. Yet, as I sat in the sterile conference room on that rainy Tuesday morning, none of that seemed to matter. Across the table sat Daniel Wright, the newly appointed CEO with an MBA and zero healthcare experience, flanked by Vanessa from Human Resources and Peter, the CFO whose spreadsheets had become more important than patient outcomes. "Rebecca, thank you for coming in," Daniel began, his voice rehearsed and emotionless. "As part of our new strategic direction, we're streamlining the leadership structure. Unfortunately, your position has been identified as redundant." Redundant. The word hung in the air between us. 23 years of institutional knowledge, relationships with staff across every department, and the trust of our physicians, all deemed redundant by someone who'd been with the company for less than 6 months. I maintained my composure, my hands folded neatly in my lap. Years of handling medical crises had taught me how to keep a calm exterior while my mind raced. Peter leaned forward, unable to hide his satisfaction. "We're bringing in fresh perspectives, Rebecca. Healthcare is changing, and frankly, some of our veteran staff are resistant to innovation." Vanessa slid a folder across the table, avoiding eye contact. "We've prepared a severance package. 2 months' salary, continuation of benefits for 60 days, and outplacement services." From the corner of the room, Jamie, the young director of innovation, who'd been with us barely 18 months, offered awkwardly, "Your contributions have been invaluable, Rebecca. But sometimes organizations need to evolve." I smiled politely, though my pulse quickened. "I understand. May I have until the end of the week to review the paperwork?" Daniel seemed surprised by my calm acceptance. "Of course. We'll need your badge, laptop, and company phone by Friday at 5. Your team will be informed tomorrow morning." My team. 37 dedicated professionals who looked to me for guidance and protection from exactly this kind of corporate callousness. The thought of leaving them vulnerable hurt more than losing my own position. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, taking the folder without opening it. Daniel nodded curtly, already checking his watch. Peter didn't bother hiding his smirk, and Vanessa continued her careful study of her notepad. Only Jamie seemed uncomfortable with the proceedings, fidgeting with her pen. What they didn't know was that I had seen this coming. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been accidentally copied on an email chain between Daniel and the board discussing leadership restructuring and removing tenured obstacles. They spoke about me as if my experience was a liability rather than an asset. I walked back to my office, passing the conference room where Daniel's new leadership team was already planning their organizational transformation retreat at a beachside resort. Their excited chatter felt like salt in a fresh wound. In my office, I closed the door and pulled out my personal phone. I sent a text to a number I'd been hesitant to contact. "It's happening. Friday will be my last day." The response came immediately. "I've been waiting for your call. Dinner tonight?" I exhaled slowly. Tonight, I would meet with someone who valued exactly what Daniel and his team had discarded. I arrived at Ellington's, an elegant restaurant across town, far from our hospital campus. The sophisticated atmosphere and private booths made it perfect for conversations away from curious eyes. "Rebecca, over here," called a familiar voice. I made my way to a corner booth where Catherine Langford, CEO of Meridian Health Partners, was waiting with a glass of wine already poured for me. "So, they actually went through with it," she said as I sat down. "Just as we anticipated," I replied, taking a grateful sip. Daniel's ego and Peter's obsession with short-term financials made it inevitable. Catherine shook her head. "When Daniel left us at Meridian last year to take the CEO position at Montgomery, I warned the board about his pattern. He makes a splash with dramatic restructuring, claims credit for the short-term financial boost, then moves on before the long-term damage becomes apparent." I'd known Catherine professionally for years. Montgomery and Meridian were competitors, but we'd served on several healthcare improvement committees together. When Daniel was appointed at Montgomery, Catherine had reached out with concerns. I didn't want to believe it, I admitted, but when I saw that email chain outlining his plans to remove the old guard, I knew my days were numbered. Catherine leaned forward. Have you considered what we discussed? I nodded, reaching into my bag to retrieve a slim portfolio. It's all here, the patient-centered care integration model I've been developing for the past 2 years. The one Montgomery's board kept putting on the back burner because it required initial investment. Catherine opened the folder, her eyes scanning the documents with growing appreciation. This is exceptional, Rebecca. Your model addresses the very issues healthcare systems across the country are struggling with. And you developed this entirely on your own time? Nights, weekends, my own resources. I even self-funded a pilot with a small patient group to validate the outcomes. The data speaks for itself. 22% reduction in readmissions, 31% improvement in patient satisfaction, and significant cost savings once fully implemented. Catherine closed the portfolio with a decisive snap. Meridian is ready to implement this immediately. Full attribution to you as the developer, of course, and we want you to lead it. You're offering me a position? Chief of Patient Experience and Clinical Integration. It's a new role, reporting directly to me. Full autonomy, higher salary than you were making, and a team twice the size of your current one. I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. What about my team at Montgomery? Catherine smiled. We have room for the best of them. You know who they are. As we clinked glasses, I felt not bitterness but anticipation. Daniel thought Friday marked the end of my career at Montgomery. He had no idea it was only the beginning of something far more significant. Montgomery Health felt different when I arrived the next morning. News travels fast in hospitals, and the worried glances from colleagues confirmed that rumors of my departure were already circulating. I spent the day meticulously organizing transition documents, not because Montgomery deserved it, but because patients and staff did. Every protocol, every contact, every process was documented in perfect detail. Yet without my context and relationships, these would be merely words on paper. Throughout the day, my team members found reasons to stop by my office. Maria, our veteran nurse manager, closed the door behind her. Is it true? She asked directly. I nodded. Friday is my last day. Her face fell. What are we supposed to do without you? Daniel and his team don't understand how things actually work here. They've never even done rounds with the physicians. Check your personal email tonight, I said quietly. She raised an eyebrow but nodded before leaving. By afternoon, Vanessa from HR appeared with exit paperwork and a non-compete agreement. Standard procedure, she explained, sliding the document across my desk. I reviewed it carefully before signing. I understand completely. I won't compete with Montgomery within the terms specified. The agreement prohibited me from taking a similar position at a competing hospital within 30 miles. Meridian's main campus was 32 miles away. Vanessa seemed relieved to have the formality completed without drama. She was halfway out the door when Daniel appeared. Rebecca, getting all your affairs in order? He asked with forced casualness. Everything will be properly transitioned, I assured him. Great! No hard feelings, I hope. Sometimes we need to make room for new growth. You understand? I smiled politely. I understand perfectly. Good. Maybe enjoy some time off? Travel a bit? I hear Florida is nice this time of year. Actually, I've already accepted a new position, I said quietly. I start on Monday. Daniel seemed momentarily thrown off balance. Oh, well, good for you. Something local? His concern was transparent. He was thinking about the non-compete. Something perfect, I replied, offering nothing more. He nodded awkwardly and left. I continued packing my personal items, knowing that Monday would arrive quickly. Friday came with a strange sense of finality. I handed over my badge, laptop, and phone to Vanessa, who conducted my exit interview with mechanical efficiency. Will you be available if the team has transition questions? She asked, not meeting my eyes. I've documented everything thoroughly, I replied, but I'll be quite busy with my new role starting Monday. As I walked out of Montgomery Health for the last time, carrying a small box of personal belongings, I felt a surprising sense of lightness. 23 years had ended not with celebration but with a sterile dismissal. Yet ahead lay opportunity, recognition, and the chance to implement what I had always known was possible. I spent the weekend finalizing preparations and sending detailed messages to key members of my Montgomery team. By Sunday evening, everything was in place. Monday morning dawned clear and bright. I dressed in my best suit, feeling energized in a way I hadn't in years. As I drove to Meridian's campus, my phone began buzzing with notifications. The press release had gone live. Meridian Health Partners announces Rebecca Taylor as Chief of Patient Experience and Clinical Integration. Pioneering care model promises to transform patient outcomes. The release detailed my background, my development of the integrated care model, and Meridian's commitment to implementing it system-wide. More importantly, it emphasized that this model had been developed independently, on my own time, and with my own resources. As I parked at Meridian, my phone lit up with a text from Maria. "OMG, Daniel just called an emergency leadership meeting. Your name is being mentioned a lot." I smiled as I walked into my new office, larger, with a window overlooking a healing garden, and already set up with everything I needed. Catherine met me at the door. "The announcement is making waves," she said with satisfaction. "3 physician groups have already called, asking if this means you're bringing your care coordination model here." "This is just the beginning," I replied. By mid-morning, social media was buzzing with the news. Healthcare blogs were analyzing the potential impact of my patient care model. But the most satisfying messages were from my former team at Montgomery. "Maria, the board is questioning Daniel about why your model wasn't implemented at Montgomery. He's blaming budget constraints." "Jamie, they're scrambling to understand your transition documents. No one knows where to find half the information." By noon, my phone rang with a number I recognized immediately. Montgomery's main line. "Rebecca Taylor speaking," I answered calmly. "Rebecca, it's Daniel." His voice lacked its usual confidence. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. We should discuss your project." My independently developed patient care model? The one I presented to the board 3 times over the past 2 years? The one you described as too ambitious just last month? "Yes. Well, situations change. We'd like to discuss implementation options." "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Daniel. Meridian has exclusive rights now." "But surely we can negotiate a licensing arrangement." "That would be a question for Meridian's legal team. And for your board, of course. I understand they have some questions about why this model wasn't implemented at Montgomery when you had the opportunity." The line went quiet for a moment. "This isn't how colleagues should treat each other, Rebecca." "I couldn't agree more, Daniel. Have a good day." By the end of the day, 7 members of my former team had contacted me about positions at Meridian. Catherine had already approved the additional headcount, anticipating this very scenario. 2 days later, Montgomery's board chair reached out to Catherine directly, requesting a meeting to discuss a potential partnership around the patient care model. Apparently, several major physician groups had made it clear they were considering moving their affiliations to Meridian specifically because of the new program. And me. 3 weeks after my dismissal from Montgomery, I sat in Meridian's boardroom as Catherine finalized a licensing agreement that would allow Montgomery to implement a limited version of my care model at a considerable cost. Daniel sat across the table, his expression carefully neutral. "We're pleased to establish this collaborative relationship," Catherine said smoothly as the documents were signed. "Indeed," replied Montgomery's board chair with a sideways glance at Daniel. "We value innovation, especially when it improves patient care." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. As the Montgomery contingent prepared to leave, Daniel lingered behind. "You planned this all along," he said quietly. I looked at him steadily. "No, Daniel. You planned this when you decided experience and dedication were liabilities rather than assets. I simply ensured that patients wouldn't suffer for that decision." "Your loyalty was to the patients and to healthcare excellence," I interrupted. "Still is. That's something you might want to consider in your next restructuring." As I watched him leave, I felt no triumph, only certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. Sometimes being redundant in one place means you're essential somewhere else. The following week, Meridian's implementation of my care model began receiving national attention. Healthcare publications were calling it revolutionary and the future of integrated care. 3 more of my former team members joined Meridian, bringing valuable expertise and institutional knowledge. 6 months later, when Daniel quietly left Montgomery for new opportunities, I wasn't surprised. Catherine and I were too busy presenting preliminary results of the care model at a national healthcare conference, results that showed even greater improvements than my initial pilot had suggested. As we accepted an innovation award on behalf of Meridian, Catherine leaned over and whispered, "Not bad for someone who was redundant, hmm?" I smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought me here. Sometimes the best response to being undervalued isn't anger or argument, it's excellence.